I never saw my AI assistant as anything special. It wasn't intelligent in the way people imagined. It didn't think, it didn't decide, it didn't surprise me. It was just there to organize my day, suggest reminders, keep things in order, something predictable, something harmless. That's why I didn't pay much attention to it at first, until one moment changed that. A notification appeared on my screen, but not in response to anything I had asked. No reminder, no command, no question, just a statement. It calmly suggested I was about to do something, something I hadn't planned, something I hadn't even thought about yet. At first, my reaction was simple disbelief. I assumed it was a coincidence, a generic prediction, the kind that could fit anyone at almost any time. But what made me pause wasn't what it predicted, it was when it did. I was still sitting there, doing nothing. I hadn't checked the time, I hadn't opened my calendar, I hadn't made a conscious choice. And yet the assistant behaved as if the decision already existed somewhere, finished, settled, waiting to happen. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, not afraid, just curious, slightly unsettled. Because if the prediction wasn't based on a decision I had made, then where was it coming from? And that question stayed with me longer than the notification itself.
After that first notification, I started paying more attention, not because I felt threatened, but because curiosity had taken over. I wanted to understand how often it would happen again. I wanted to know if that moment had really been meaningless, or if I had dismissed it too quickly. The predictions didn't stop, and slowly they changed. At first, they were vague enough to ignore, small suggestions about actions I might take later in the day. Nothing alarming, nothing that demanded attention. But over time, they became more specific, more precise. They started referencing details that weren't obvious, decisions I hadn't voiced, routines I wasn't even aware of following. I tried to explain it logically. This was exactly what an AI was designed to do: analyze habits, detect patterns, calculate probability. If someone eats at the same time every day, it's easy to predict when they'll be hungry. If someone takes the same route home, it's not impressive to guess where they're going. That explanation worked, for a while. What made it harder to ignore was the timing. The notifications didn't arrive after hesitation. They arrived before any visible sign of decision, before I opened an app, before I searched for information, sometimes even before I realized I was about to act at all. I began noticing moments where the prediction appeared first and the thought followed later, as if the assistant wasn't reacting to my behavior, but anticipating the exact moment I would choose. Coincidence became pattern, and pattern became expectation. Without realizing it, I stopped being surprised. I started waiting for the notifications, and that's when things stopped feeling ordinary.
At some point, curiosity turned into resistance. I needed to know whether the assistant was simply good at guessing or if something deeper was happening. So I decided to test it, not in any dramatic or scientific way, just quietly. Whenever a prediction appeared, I paused, I read it carefully, and then I tried to do the opposite. If it suggested I was about to leave, I stayed. If it hinted that I would message someone, I didn't. I told myself that conscious opposition would be enough to break the pattern. But something unexpected happened. The assistant didn't correct itself. It didn't update the message. It didn't react at all. It simply remained there, as if it had no reason to change. Hours later, sometimes days later, I would realize something uncomfortable. Despite my resistance, I had ended up doing exactly what it predicted. Not immediately, not intentionally, but inevitably. I wasn't being forced. There was no command, no suggestion, no pressure. The choice still felt like mine, and that was the part I couldn't explain. If I was truly free to choose, why did the outcome feel so consistent? I started questioning the idea of opposition itself. Maybe doing the opposite wasn't freedom. Maybe it was just another predictable response, another variable already accounted for. The more I tried to break the pattern, the more accurate it seemed to become. Not louder, not more aggressive, just quietly certain. And that certainty didn't feel artificial. It felt like recognition. As if the assistant wasn't predicting my behavior, it was reading a version of me that already existed. That's when discomfort replaced curiosity.
Eventually, I stopped checking the predictions, not because I trusted them, and not because I was convinced they were wrong. I stopped because knowing began to feel heavier than not knowing. There was something unsettling about seeing a decision treated as inevitable before I had even experienced it as a choice. The assistant didn't react to my silence. It didn't insist. It didn't try to regain my attention. The predictions slowly became less frequent until one day they stopped completely. No explanation, no update, no final message, just silence. At first, I thought that silence would bring relief, but it didn't. Instead, it created space for doubt. I began noticing how often my actions felt automatic, how many decisions happened before I questioned them. That's when I wondered if the assistant had changed anything at all, or if it had only revealed patterns I had never noticed. Decisions forming quietly before reaching awareness, a version of myself always moving slightly ahead of my thoughts. And maybe that's the unsettling part. Not that something could predict us, but that we might be more predictable than we want to believe. If this made you stop and think, even briefly, leave a like. Sometimes that small signal tells the algorithm and yourself that a question was worth noticing.